Stamina is a mechanic added with the express purpose of nerfing the player's mobility, and it does this quite well, especially since most players don't really understand how to properly counteract stamina. Some actions in GTFO affect and are affected by your stamina. Sprinting is especially important as it allows you to cover long distances quicker. This is where stamina becomes enemy number 1. Knowledge of how this works may make the difference between the enemy wave behind you catching up with your team, or you making it to the extraction safely and having time to spare to set up your defenses. Basics. Your stamina is a value between 0% and 100% represented as a floating point number. This value itself is hidden from you visually, but it is represented on your HUD by your BPM on the left of the HP bar. The BPM is a value between 60, representing 100%, and 180, representing 0% stamina. This BPM meter also fluctuates 4 to 5 BPM higher or lower than the actual stamina value. Counterintuitively to other games, stamina in GTFO affects your actions even if you never reach 0%. In other games, your character might stop from sprinting when you reach 0. However, in this game, your sprinting and melee charging gets progressively more and more slow as your stamina gets slower. Not only they get slower, but this effect is exponential. And another important factor is that stamina gets a lot more brutal when in combat. Specifically, out of combat your stamina cannot decrease when below 60%, and while in combat your stamina will never increase when above 90%. Because of this, in speedruns, wherever possible, you always want to kill every single awake enemy, since that can save quite a lot of time, even on short runs. Preserving stamina. Generally, when it comes to preserving stamina, never shove, jump, or charge and hit with your melee unless you absolutely need to. To be noted, you can just charge your weapon and then right click to cancel it. These actions all consume a lot of stamina and they will make every action after considerably slower. The only exception to this is shoving and meleeing with knife, as this action does not consume stamina. Knife simply doesn't have any costs when it comes to these actions. There is also the slide tech that you can use to preserve stamina while running. Simply hold crouch for a very short amount of time, or double tap crouch if you use the hold crouch setting, and while your character is in the animation of sliding, you will not lose speed. But you also don't consume stamina for that short amount of time. This can save quite a lot of time on long runs. Stamina resets. Our main trick against stamina, slowing down not every action, is to make sure we reset stamina back to 100% before it gets too low, and thus the run speed or charging speed gets too low. To this, there are 2 steps: how to do a stamina reset, which is fairly simple, and when to stamina reset. The stamina reset happens when you don't do any action that consumes stamina for at least 2.5 seconds, and regenerates quite fast, 15% per second when in combat, and 25% per second when you're not in combat. As such, all you have to do a stamina reset is just stop your charging your melee, shoving, and running until you see around 70 BPM on your HUD. Keep in mind that the shorter your stamina reset is, the better. So if you're going for optimal time on a run, you may need to guess when your stamina reaches maximum, as the actual BPM meter only updates once every second. The second part is a bit more complicated. When should your stamina reset? Generally, reset your stamina when your BPM is around 120 to 130, and make sure you don't reset your stamina when you're too close to the end of the sprint. Similar rules apply to meleeing, as having to melee while on 70 BPM is a lot easier and safer than meleeing on 130 BPM. Do keep in mind that for non-combat stamina, when sprinting you still want to reset around 100 BPM. I will explain the math on this later, as it does get quite complicated, and the general rule of thumb of 100 BPM is good enough. Few common mistakes. Reaching above 160 BPM. This significantly slows you down and you should almost never reach. There are definitely situations where this may be required and optimal, but they are rare and usually mean something else has gone wrong. Most players simply realize that they now need to reset their stamina because their character starts breathing heavily and eventually their HP bar turns yellow. Not resetting your stamina completely. It is way better to simply reset your stamina all the way to 60 BPM out of combat and 72 BPM in combat, rather than resetting only slightly and then running back once again your character stops breathing heavily. Pressing A or D when running. By running left and right diagonally, you slow yourself down even more. This should be avoided at all costs. It is always better to just let go of sprint and go diagonally if really needed, or just move your camera 45 degrees to the left or to the right. Shoving, charging, meleeing the air, jumping randomly. These all consume stamina heavily, and spamming them can instantly drain your stamina to the maximum and force you to reset it. If you're running somewhere, and especially if there are enemies alive, never waste your stamina. This can even include jump reloading. You should jump reload only if you plan to reset your stamina after the jump and while you finish the reload, or if you're dodging a hit. Running specifically. As I've noted previously, the combat stamina and non-combat stamina behave slightly differently, and because of this you will see two different graphs, one for combat, one for non-combat. The x-axis is the time you spend sprinting. The y-axis tells you at which BPM you have to reset in order to cover the maximum distance in that sprint. As you can see, the longer time you spend running, the more resets you need to do, but you still want to keep your BPM well below 130 in combat and below 100 out of combat. Another thing to note is that a slightly later reset than optimal is better than a slightly earlier reset. The difference is not too high and you can adapt slightly. However, by far the most important thing is to make sure your stamina reset is as optimal as possible by running as early as your stamina gets back to 100% or 90% in combat. You may need some practice with this, as the timing can feel a bit weird, especially since the BPM meter is randomized. This is a cheat sheet that shows everything about stamina. Feel free to use it, and I hope I'll see you posting runs.
Where are my sentries now?
That's 7 solo. I fucking hell rifle!